Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the podcast, The Space Between, with myself and Pete and Aaron. Um, I wanted to introduce today, referencing something that almost seems unrelated to what we normally talk about. I wanted to talk about the compound effect. Now, this isn't going to turn into an investing podcast, which is where we would normally hear about the compound effect, interest earning interest over time, growing into a bigger pot of money. But I want to relate it to the compound effect of making even the smallest change in our lives. If we make a small change, as long as we implement it and then introduce it consistently into our lives, over time, the difference it can make, even the smallest change, the difference it can make in your life can be huge. So, whether it's weeks, months, years, you will look back at that small change that you made and realize that, hey, that one small change has made a huge difference to my life. And I'm trying to make some small changes myself. Uh, Even something small, seemingly small, like trying to reduce screen time and looking at phones and getting away from all of that. Uh, I've tried recently just to implement some changes to reduce that screen time, and it's been quite effective and released some extra time that I can use for doing more useful things than doom scrolling and watching cats doing strange things on YouTube and all the rest of it. Uh, and taking that forward, I just want put it out there as to it doesn't have to be a change where we're introducing something new. It can be a small change, just stopping doing something. So it doesn't have to be an addition to a busy life. It can actually be a subtraction. And stopping doing that actually eases things for people. What do you think, guys? Have got any examples of any small changes that you've made?
Um, I think it's a great topic to talk about. I totally agree with you, Steve. Like that butterfly effect, right? It's like I look back in my life and there are things that I did that were kind of just small changes that I made, and oftentimes not changes that I was in control of. There was a change that happened in my life that just happened beyond my control, which, let's face it, 95% of things that happen to us are beyond our control, resulted in a change, which at the time I thought was a small change. Um, but then it had knock-on effects down the line that you can only really see in retrospect. You know, I was introduced to someone in a restaurant I was living in New York at the time, and Louise, and she became a really good friend. And it was totally by a total coincidence that we'd met. But she happened to be selling houses in Connecticut. And I hadn't thought about that at all. And she said, why don't you guys think about moving up to Connecticut? Never thought in a million years I would do that. Fast forward a year later, we're living in Connecticut. We've got a really good social situation going on in Connecticut. That then living in Connecticut for 4 years then led us to consider to move back to Ireland. Now we're living in that. Like just by that, just one meeting, everything changed in my life. My job changed, my place of work, my place of residence changed. Even my country subsequently changed. And I think back to that meeting, to that just that kind of, glass of wine over a meal in a restaurant, what, 10, 15 years ago. Um, that's just one example. And there are hundreds, thousands probably of those examples. And I guess when I look back at most of the things that have been changed, which I either thought was something stopping happening that I thought was good, or something happening that I thought was bad, all of them have resulted in me being where I am today. And I don't think it could be any different, right? Because it happened the way it happened. And like I say, most of them weren't my, I don't really have many regrets in life because I think those changes that have happened in the past happened because they had to happen. That's it. And when you look on change that way, I think it become a little less scary. It's not always easy to look at it that way, but I kind of feel like when I look back on those things, I just feel like, yeah, it's all stepping stones. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, by the way, Steve, but that came to mind when you started talking. What do you think, Aaron? Do you have any examples of
Well, when you
real
say
change?
that, it's interesting because it's like when you step into that change, you're unsure of the unknown. And then all of a sudden, like you're 5 years into your journey and you're going, yeah, these all led little dots and points in my life to get me to where I'm at. And we don't see that as the opportunity when a new presentation of change comes into effect, right? So if we're sitting there, there's an opportunity to go, we go, oh shit, there's change. What do I do? But if you able to zoom out and go, okay, well, it's just a little bit of fear jumping in. But when we
Mm,
zoom out and we go, wow, like that changed, that move to Connecticut for you led to this job, led to you being in Ireland. Like, but if we can zoom out and go, where could this take me?
mm,
What's the direction that I could, or where could I be at this point next year if I did just take this opportunity and go with it? Sometimes that it disconnects you maybe from that fear. If you're able to just kind of zoom out a little bit and open it up more than just putting that pressure on that specific, even if you're just changing article of clothing that you never wore before. You know what I mean? Just something different in yourself. It'll slowly turn into who you are because you let the dots just kind of unravel or connect as you walked about your day, and that's just being led on your path, I believe. I don't know, does it make a little
it
bit of sense?
does.
It kind of
I
like
mean,
because when you zoom
I mean, if
out,
you think about it, guys, like everything is about change, isn't it? Like everything changes. Everything. I mean, like you could change your position on the seat, and that's a change. Everything change. That's the whole nature of reality, right? Is like everything is in flux. Even empty space is full of activity, right? There's always something happening somewhere. And isn't that right? Like, wouldn't life be awfully boring if there was no change?
yeah,
You know? So I kind of look on, even when we get changes that are bad, I mean, we're labeling it bad, right? Like the nature isn't labeling it good or bad. It just happens, right? It's just what's happening right now. So we're labeling a change as good or bad. But in actual fact, a change is just a change and is the most natural thing in the world to happen.
We were talking about plans just before we hit the record button there, and a 100-day plan, I think you referred to, Pete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't life be boring if everything just went to plan?
Yeah.
Not set out your course for 100 days and everything just happens smoothly.
yeah,
It'd be nice, but not exactly challenging if everything just happens the way you envisage it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good example of the mind trying to take control of the future when it has no power over the future whatsoever. You know, you may have some influence over it, but you don't own the future at all. So you could write a plan. And how often have you, like I've written business plans and work and stuff. I would say I'm lucky if 30% of it actually worked out, in all honesty. I think doing things like that just helps the mind to settle a little bit to think, okay, at least I've got something that I can use to help predict the future. You really can't predict the future, but at least I'm holding on to something so that I'm not dealing with an unknown. Because I'm a big believer in like the unknown is the scariest thing, that's scarier than anything else. It like if you're a cave person, you see a dinosaur running towards you, at least you know it's a dinosaur and you can run out the way. When you're like, it's scary, right? But something kicks in and you just run the hell out of there. If you hear a noise in the bushes, what the hell's that? That could be anything. That's even more scary. So I think the human mind is wired to fill in the blanks of the unknown with the absolute worst case scenario. So a plan and planning for the future and planning for change at least puts a placeholder in there So your mind can say, okay, I know what I'm going to do for the next 3 months in work. You're probably not, but at least it makes you feel better. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
also
That
the practice.
that's what
Yeah.
I think anyway. It's not you're not dealing. Change is not the scary thing. Change happens all the time, and we deal with it most of the time. We change cars, and that's okay because you know what car you're going to change to when you get a new car, right? But if somebody said to you, "I'm going to swap your car with one you've no idea what it is," yeah, there'd probably be some anticipation and some worry about that. You'd need to know information. What's it worth? Is it a four-wheel drive? Is it automatic? What color is it? You need to fill in the blanks. And then if somebody said, well, actually, it's a Mercedes Benz worth 5 times more than your car, when you know that, I'm happy with that change. So now the change is a good thing. Change isn't necessarily good or bad. It's when you don't know what the future is, what that change entails. That's what's scary.
yeah. It's like any external event, isn't it? The external event's always neutral. It's only whatever meaning we attach to it
Yeah.
that makes it good or bad.
Say that again, Steve.
Any external event, it's only the meaning that we attach to it that makes it good or bad.
Yeah.
Do you know that reminds you of there's a Shakespeare quote. There is nothing good nor bad that except thinking makes it so.
Mm.
I don't know what play it's in, but it just came to mind that even Shakespeare was saying that in the 1700s. Like, you know, we've always known this, but we kind of forget about it and we let the external world determine, oh, I don't like change. Nah, that's not true.
So how do you shift something that's like you think this change is going to be bad, but you know it's going to be good? So how do you know what I mean? So the mind will take you to that negative state quicker than it'll take you to the positive state because that's part of the practice, right? It's
Yeah,
harder, it's easier to stay negative or down than it is to stay positive and up because that's the work, right? So like how do you drive that towards, being consistent or to have it take that shape. Does that
yeah.
make sense?
I mean, I personally, I think for me anyway, it starts with knowing how it works. Like, how
Yeah.
does this, what's the mechanics of this? And as we've just said, the mechanics is, that like change isn't good or bad. It's what your mind does with the concept of change. If you don't know what the change is going to be, or you think it's out of your control, like you get fired from your job, that wasn't under your control. That just happened to you. But actually, it's not the external event that's happened to you that's worrying you. It's what your mind is telling you, because your mind then is thrown into the unknown. And it's like, right, I'm going to create a worst case scenario so that if I can deal with that, I can deal with anything that's better than that. So I've lost my job. I'm going to lose my house, my family, my kids. I'm going to end up on the streets drinking Jack Daniels.
Mm.
But my mind would go there in 10 seconds, right? And has many times gone there, right? And that's it. That's what's going to happen. But now I know what it's trying to do. It's trying to help me in a way, right? It's trying to say, well, I'm going to give you the worst, shittiest thing that can happen to you, so that anything better than that. So you're not drinking Jack Daniels, you're drinking a 5-year-old bottle of Glenlivet instead. Then that's better. Great. Anything else is better than what your mind can imagine. When you know that's how the mind works, it's just a natural way that it works. Then you can actually, I find myself then now when that image comes up, kind of in a way, kind of laughing, not mocking, but like, I know, I get it. I get what you're trying to do. And that like detaches you a little bit because that's not you. That's your mind projecting a worst case scenario because it doesn't like the unknown. So to answer your question, Aaron, I know it's a bit flaky of an answer, but just the knowledge of knowing that's how it works, um, helps. It helps me. It helped me anyway.
Yeah.
And hopefully, it helps get you back towards the now rather than trying to predict the future. So I think that's a lot of the time that's where we get stuck, is we get in that loop of trying to predict the future, and 9 times out of 10 we can't. Like you said, that there are some things that are predictable, that you can predict will happen, but a lot of the times, you can't actually see the future. Things are going to change and things are going to turn out very differently to how you might predict them anyway. So it kind of highlights the value of
Mm.
enjoying the present moment rather than trying to sort out what is going to happen in an unknown future.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's go ahead, Pete.
That's why it helps me to, you can connect the dots going backwards. You can't
Yeah.
connect the dots going forwards. But when you connect the dots going backwards, as we just talked about, you see that those times where change happened and it was like, oh my God, I remember when I lost my job. I was in the States and I lost I couldn't believe I'd lost my job. It was like just a redundancy kind of thing. What am I going to do now? Straight away, I'm drinking that Jack Daniels, right? Uh, homeless, familyless, penniless. And what actually happened? I got a better job. I was able to go on that vacation to Asia that I wanted to do. I was able, like, all these, like, you can always go back to the things that were awful things that happened to you in the past that you thought were awful at the time, which most of the time either worked out okay or didn't work out as badly as you thought they would. Most of the time, so what's the possibility or probability of things that are happening to you now that are negative or that you don't want to have happen? What's the probability that they're going to land you in a better or equal place? Just on the law of probability. Highly probable that it's not going to affect you that much. Now your mind will try and tell you, oh yes, it will. This is the one now. This is the one that's going to break you. And it
Mm.
never is. It
Mm.
couldn't be because we wouldn't be here talking like this if it had,
Mm.
you know? So try and apply a little bit of logic, a bit of statistics to it, and say like, it may feel bad now, but when I join the dots later, I'm gonna know that this wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah. I heard on another podcast that 85% of the things that we maybe worry about never actually happen.
Oh.
And out of the remaining 15%, 12% never happens as badly as you anticipate. Like you say, we always go to the negative. So 12% never actually happens as badly as you imagine it might. So you're only left with 3% to deal with
Yeah.
that might cause you a bit of an issue,
Yeah.
but you can't predict which situations are going to be that 3%.
Right.
So
So don't try and control, but that 3% controls everything, Steve.
yeah,
Mm.
And why should it? Why should it? Like, if 97 people told you one thing and 3% people told you something else, who would you really tend to believe? But not so with your mind. That 3% is 10 times louder than the 97%.
yeah,
And that's okay. That's the way it works. That's nothing, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with that. That is a defense mechanism. Your mind is really trying to help you out here by, like, what happens if it is the three? Let's always assume everything is the three then. So it can never be worse. And when you know that, then you know that most of the thoughts that come into your mind when change happens, you can throw away 97% of it.
yeah,
It's those repetitions, right? Those repetitions to stay positive, to move forward. And it's like it's really interesting that the 97% keeps us stuck. But is it because of failure or a letdown is more prominent, so it sticks with us? And it's harder to stay in the positive or believe in ourselves because we have so much. I don't want to call it failure, but disappointment, whatever it may be, we all have it. We all share that, but we all tend to go that direction. Now, some people don't, some people find it easier, but some find it easier to go back into those old patterns, be fearful of change, right? So it's like, is it the repetitions that keep us stuck or, our minds, beliefs? What do you guys think that it keeps us there?
It's a program, Aaron. We're all little computers that have been programmed since we were kids. Think about that. Like my 11-year-old daughter, even now, I'll say, like, if you do that again, I'll do this. No more iPad time if you say that again. If so, there's always consequences. Like if you make a mistake like that again, I'm gonna take off your iPad for 6 hours or something. Like this is just reinforced throughout our entire lives that if this happens, then there's a consequence to it. So it's a program that's always running in our heads, and after a period of time, we just tell ourselves that we don't need to be told it by our parents or teachers or friends. We'll tell it to ourselves, um, and we'll punish ourselves because of it, because that's the voice that's been in our head since we were 4 years old, and that's just the way society works, unfortunately. Um, so
So it's
it's so I think you're right, it's repetition because it's a program that's been running hundreds of millions of times in our minds.
it's a story, right? We're telling ourselves.
It's just it's and it is a story. It's fabrication.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the quote, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Yeah.
Mm.
And the suffering is just like you say, the repetition of that program over and over again. When, as human beings, we all suffer pain at some point, whatever kind of pain that might be. But we don't have to relive it every day for the rest of our lives. And that's where the suffering comes in. That's where the choice is.
Why is that? Like, but why is that the case, right? Is it addicting? The pain, like the change, you know what I mean? Like you said something there, I forget what you said, but it was like it's what I felt that are we addicted to the suffering because it's easier or it's been 97% of our lives, right?
Do you mean like that victim mentality?
Sure. Yeah. Or we just see ourselves, we don't see ourselves like I see you or I see Pete. Like we see ourselves differently through that lens of that 97% failure or whatnot. And I think that's what you know what I mean? I see that as the opportunity to kind of grasp and just go, okay, well, I see myself differently than I see you. You two see me. And like that's the viewpoint of life, right? That's our lens, that's our scope. And that's hard to break to see yourself in another light that your friends, family, coworkers, coach, whatever it is, that's the lens we want to encourage others to see through. And that's where we're trying to get through with these conversations of the space between. It was just an opportunity to kind of, see ourselves differently. And I think that's what we're trying to curate here. It's just an opportunity to see yourself differently in that change? Can you see yourself in that CEO seat? If not, fine, that's not for you. That's okay.
Yeah.
There's something else for you. What's your best self right now?
So it's raising an awareness of reality and truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not
Because I
what
think
you think. But
I
what
mean,
we think isn't always the truth.
Yeah.
Steve, most of the time, what we think is. Think about when you say what we think, right? Excuse the pun, but think about this, right?
Yeah.
If you just close your eyes and don't think about anything, right? Something will come into your head that you had no intention of thinking whatsoever, right? Totally not your volition, right? Same thing the other way around. Like if I say both to you guys now, do not think of a purple elephant. You both just thought of a purple elephant. You couldn't
Dang
stop
it.
it. You were not able to stop that. So you are not in control of your thoughts, really. You are in charge of some thoughts. I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. Yeah, that's a great proactive thought. Enable us to evolve. Fantastic. But I'd say that's probably 3% of the thoughts that we have. The 97% are thoughts that we have absolutely no control over. And where they come from, that's a whole other podcast, right? That's fascinating. But they're coming from somewhere and it's not from us. So why should you think that you have control over them? Because you didn't think them. They just come in. And actually, they were only ever meant to come in and just go past.
Yeah.
And then you can select which ones you want to believe in. But most of them, 97% probably,
Yeah.
are just fictitious thoughts that your mind it just self-generates. It just goes across like waves. And you don't have to hold on to that wave. But most of us do, especially those ones that are really negatively charged. You
Yeah.
look awful this morning. You're putting on weight. You're going to have a heart attack next year. Whoa, whoa. Yeah, absolutely. Believe that. Totally. Where did that come from? You didn't think it. It just manifested. So why should you hold on to that and believe it? But we do.
Mm.
Fascinating. So when you
Yeah.
know that, I'm not saying you can always do that. Like I still practicing this stuff for years and I still hold on to stuff.
Yeah.
But I think now it's a little bit different in that, like, I know I'm holding on to it. I know that now. And I know I have a choice of letting go. And sometimes I can't let go. It's just so strong. I can't let go of it. But there's other times, the majority of the time, where I think that wasn't me. That came from somewhere else. Nothing to do with me. It just passed through my field of vision. And now it's gone.
Yeah, it's
I,
part of the human experience, isn't it,
Yeah,
to have that
yeah,
going on?
yeah,
And
exactly.
and in that moment, it's our choice whether to act on that or to let it go. And as you say, sometimes as a human being, we don't let it go. It does consume us. But what we're trying to do through this podcast is raise the awareness of what's going on so that you can catch yourself in that moment and realize what's actually happening
Yeah,
and you can make a change.
yeah,
yeah,
there you go, Steve. And that's where your awareness goes, right? That if those ones are really positively charged and you're really attracted and you're staying there, there is change within that, right? You can see that, and that's brilliant, Steve, that you brought that back
yeah.
to the point right
And
there.
I'd say even the really positively charged ones,
Yeah,
like also be careful. Don't hold on to those either, because
yeah,
then they won't stick around. Nothing sticks. Everything changes, right? So you hear
yeah,
about these people who win the lottery and they're broke within a year. They've spent it all. You know, like even the really good things that can happen, if you hold on to those as well, they will disappear at some point, and then you get like a relationship, like, oh, I need this person. I won't survive without this person. If that's the case, you're probably going to lose that person eventually, and then you're going to be devastated. It's like I think you're right, Steve, in saying like all of these things are experiences, and that's exactly the point. If there's a reason why we're here on this little piece of dust, is to experience stuff. That's what we're here to do. Not to suffer through it, to kind of, it's a playground. And sometimes you fall off the roundabout and scratch your knee. And that's all part of being on a playground as well as the fun slide that you go onto. And if you try to look at it that way, I try and look at it that way as kids in a playground. There's ups and
yeah.
downs in that playground. But that's all we're here. That's what we're doing. We're just experiencing stuff. Um, we label it good or we label it bad, or minds do anyway.
Yeah.
Um, and if you can step back from that and look at, because that's who we really are. We're really the watch. We're really kind of, it sounds creepy, but we're watching the playground. Like that's what we're here to do. Is to watch it and to experience it.
We're watching our
Um,
thinking, yeah, our minds.
Watching kids in a playground is probably not the right metaphor to use there, but you know what I mean, right? Hopefully that reached.
It's that change, it's the practice, right? So like it still takes reps, and we still need to be okay with a little bit of setback and then move forward. Sometimes the growth only happens when we take steps back and we go, oh shit, like I took a couple steps back here. What can I do to progress and move forward? Whatever the case is, the next job, whatever it is, it's that repetitions, and we have to remind ourselves that this is where we're going, this is where we're heading. But we have to just be okay sometimes with a little bit of failure is still progress within that want of change. And we forget about that. It kind of disappears in the goal. We forget that that's part of the journey
Yeah,
of being good to yourself.
yeah, yeah. Wasn't it Thomas Edison said, when he invented the light bulb, and he tried 1,000 different ways of inventing the light bulb, and he couldn't do it. And eventually he got it. And somebody said, "Hey, you finally invented the light bulb." He said, "Well, I invented 999 ways of not making a light bulb." Like failure after failure after failure after failure. um, resulting in not just success, but humanity changing success. You know, think about any example. The top athletes, Ronaldo playing for Portugal didn't score at all, any goals at all yesterday. Unbelievable. Like disappointing. Expect him to score five, you
Hmm.
know? Wow. Did he walk off kind of dejected? I don't think so. That's just wasn't his night that night. Other nights he could score 10 goals. Like any example you could pick anywhere, the successful person at work that has a bit of a mistake, says the wrong thing. Like to your point, Steve, if it was always, even if it was always upwards progression with no mistakes, that would also be a pretty boring experience.
Yeah.
It's got to be a roller coaster. It has to be.
And it always is that roller coaster, isn't it? Like just referring back to what you said earlier on about not holding on to even the positive experiences. What we've got to realize is that everything is transient, everything changes. So enjoy those positive experiences while they last, and realize that when you are going through a negative experience, a negative thought, it's going to change. It's going to go through that cycle, and the next positive experience is just around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
just going back to the journey you were talking about there, one of the metaphors that came to mind, I just had this picture of a ship sailing across the ocean, and we've got to enjoy the journey. But if you're not happy with the destination, even the smallest change in course, a 1 degree change in the course across that whole journey, you're going to end up at a totally different destination.
Yeah.
So if you're not happy with where you're going, make some small change.
That's great. Love
It'll
that.
make a big difference,
Love
and you'll
that.
end up at a totally different destination.
Yeah.
But I guess would it be so bad if you still made it to shore? Right? And you're little off course from where you're going, but that change is still positive because you made it there and you know what? You landed and you can still move forward, right? Because I
Yeah.
think that's where some of it gets skewed too, because we want that certain thing. We don't always get it, but our path across the ocean still lands us on land and we're just off a few miles or 100 miles, but we're still moving in the right direction. That's,
Yeah.
The journey never ends.
yeah.
Um, I mean, so you land on the beach. Do you just stay on the beach and not move from the beach? No.
Right.
You move into the island. Do you stay on the island? Maybe move into the mainland. Do you stay in like it never change. You never just arrive somewhere and that's it, ever. You
You're
know,
always looking for the next thing,
there's
aren't you?
always something else.
Yeah.
Always. And rightly so. What would be the point of life if you just arrived somewhere and stopped? Be awful. Be awful. It's kind of like death. That's what death is, really. You're finished. That's the end. Um, well, actually, I debate whether that's the end, actually, but knowing that, I know it's tacky to say that life is a journey, but it really is. And use your metaphor, Steve, if you get fixated on the destination and you are 1 or 2 degrees out, and you don't arrive at the destination you wanted to, and you're disappointed, if you enjoyed the journey to get there and looked out at the sea and looked out at the dolphins and the whales and the full moon and enjoy the journey, when you get to the destination, it could very well be that it's like, oh, okay, but I enjoyed the journey though, you know? And so few of us, because we run this program, we don't see, it's like we've got blindfolds on and we can't see the sea, we can't see the journey because we're playing this program, this virtual headset that we're all wearing about going to work at 9 and coming home at 5 and living for the weekends. There is no journey until it's too late, right? Until you're in your 70s and it's like, is that it? You take the blindfold off and it's like, oh my God, I've been taking this journey the whole time and I never saw it. That's why I made this move, because that's my that's the scariest thing for me, is to wake up when it's too late and realize what I could have done. Oh my God, scariest thing.
Or at least do what you want to do, right? At least do what you want to do and look back at all the pieces that brought you to this point. And that's the
Yeah,
journey across the
yeah,
ocean, right? And that's coming back,
yeah,
right?
or at least try,
Right.
because they
Right.
say the future's not in our control, Aaron. So you may not achieve it,
Yeah.
but try,
Yeah.
try and influence it to some extent. Don't be married to the outcome, but make, as Steve said, make those small moves to course correct. Um, Even just making the small moves, I think makes you feel better
Hmm.
that you're doing something. When I was working all the time and I wanted to get into coaching, and so like 2 hours a week, I would take a coaching course. It just took 2 hours every week out of it, but the psychology of like you're doing something,
Yeah.
that fulfills a deeper need in you than just earning money was so much more satisfying than the other 45 hours I was spending at work, you know.
I
Wow.
get it.
Good. Hey, good topic, Steve. It's funny, isn't it, that we always start these things with a topic and then we fast forward 45 minutes later and we're still talking about it. And it's like, where did that come from? It's amazing when you start talking about it, where the conversation can lead.
Yeah.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just encouragement, right? Step out,
Yeah.
jump on the ship and take the ride, you
Do
know.
you guys have anything before we wrap up this week's podcast? Any other bits of insight or guidance or anything about the World Cup? Um, yeah. Do you guys have anything else? Otherwise, we can wrap it up, guys, and we'll get together again in a couple of weeks.
Good. Thank you.
I was
All
just going
right.
to say for everybody watching, just think of one small change that you can maybe make that makes a positive difference in your life, and we'd love to hear about it. After you've watched the podcast, drop us a comment about maybe the small change that you're going to try and make, and maybe that acts as a little bit of accountability. And so please comment, please share the podcast on
Mm.
your socials. Would much appreciate that. Get this out to a wider audience, and look forward to seeing you all again in a couple of weeks' time.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, guys.
See you soon, guys. Take care.